Good morning. I'd like to welcome all our friends in the US and around the world to this free sponsorship training, the Sponsorship Success Method, 3 Steps to Finding Sponsors. My name is Ken Unger. I am the president of Charge, Sponsorship Advisors, helping the buyers and sellers of sponsorship make most effective use of sponsorship. I'd like to spend some time this morning sharing with you the tips and insights from the Sponsorship Success Method so you can take this immediately and use this to benefit your sponsorship program. Now, the Sponsorship Success Method is 8 weeks of information. So I have taken that information and condensed it all into 45 minutes to give you kind of the top line things that you need to know to make your sponsorship more effective. But I wanted to leave time at the end of this live stream so that you could ask any questions that you have about sponsorship. So let's settle in, spend some time together, and hopefully we could share some insights to make your sponsorship work better for you. So the Sponsorship Success Method is essentially 3 steps to finding sponsors. First, it's important that you understand the basics of sponsorship, that you get the real facts on what makes sponsorship work and what sponsorships want. And most importantly, to be able to speak confidently to that, because you're engaged in a marketing conversation about helping sponsors solve their challenges through what you have to offer. Secondly, you're going to build your program. You're going to build a sponsorship offer that will help you pop to the top of your sponsorship category, get you the attention that you deserve with prospective sponsors, and give them the information to help them create a partnership with you. And then thirdly, you're going to go out and actually attract sponsors. You're going to leverage what you've learned and build a sponsorship program to fuel a sponsorship machine to have greater impact for your organization, not only to earn rights fees that will help you financially, but also to bring with it the promotional benefits that sponsorship can offer your organization moving forward. So a little bit of background. I think it will be important for you to settle in and stick around if you're a sponsorship seller who's trying to build a successful program while achieving meaningful sponsorship income. You need to be results oriented and truly love helping sponsors get their results. And you're not afraid of hard work to make your sponsorship goals happen. I think the biggest misconception that people have about sponsorship when I have conversations with them is that sponsorship is some quick fix to get income quickly. It's a lot of hard work. It could be very rewarding, but certainly I don't think people who work in sponsorship would ever say that sponsorship is easy per se. Now, this masterclass, this 45 minutes, might not be the best use of your time if you do think that sponsorship is easy and a quick fix, that you don't want to help sponsors with their goals, and you don't have the time to build a great sponsorship program. Now, assuming none of that's true, let's all settle in and kind of learn about the Sponsorship Success Method. Now, I want you to stay until the end for a Q&A because certainly I want you to ask any questions that are on your mind. But before we dive in, I wanted to give you a little personal and professional history on me to discuss what qualifies me to deliver this business-changing information for you on sponsorship. So I was different than my dad. My dad worked for the same company for 48 years. So by the time I was in my early 30s, I was already on my third career. And so after careers in law and in government, I started my marketing career as an auto racing executive. And at the time, I really thought that it was my dream job. I also thought that I knew everything that I needed to know about selling sponsorship. So I jumped in with both feet into a market with my sales team. Now, it was during this time that I made virtually every sponsorship sales mistake. I didn't understand sponsorship value. I didn't do my research. My brand was not sponsorship ready, and I'll talk a little about what that means in a bit. And I was an awful, awful storyteller. However, again, my dad taught me that experience isn't the best teacher, it's the only teacher. So, the experience over the 9 years that followed, I learned lessons and got the job done, closing deals, including one deal, noteworthy deal, a 5-year deal worth $30 million in cash and product. Now, those hard earned lessons, those mistakes that I made, but also the successes that I learned along the way, and 26 years in this industry have now become the sponsorship success method, the things that I'll share with you this morning. So today, I lead a sponsorship consulting company. We advise not only Fortune 500 brands, but clients large and small in the art and science of sponsorship. I carry a decade-long track record of sponsorship deals on both the buy and the sell side. But I knew that there was a part of the sponsorship market that was underserved because over the last year, we've been contacted every day by sellers looking for a different way to sell, looking for information about how to find the sponsors that they need and want. This sponsorship sales method is aimed at that part of the market. So step one in this method is learning to be confident. I think the most important thing that a sponsorship seller can do as they engage in a conversation with a sponsor and dive into this process is to be confident. And confident is being armed with the knowledge about how sponsorship works, about how sponsors view sponsorship, and to really be well armed to have these conversations in order to close sponsorship deals. Now, there's a lot into being confident and learning how sponsorship can work so that you can have these conversations with sponsorship buyers. Now, if you're looking at sponsorship both from your perspective and the perspective of your sponsor, there are 3 things I really want you to keep in mind. First, approach the sponsorship sales process as being a problem solver. Right? You are not simply trying to sell sponsorship so you can increase revenue for your organization. You have to go into this process that you're looking to solve the sponsor's problem. Now, a sponsor has business challenges. They're looking to sell more product. They're looking to sell services. They're looking to improve their image. They're looking to create brand awareness for themselves. All of them have a unique challenge in business that they're looking to solve. Usually, the solutions are found through marketing. So your prospect has a problem. If you can solve it through sponsorship, then you have a partner. The second perspective that I think is really important to make sponsorship work is think of yourself as a marketing platform. I recently had a conversation with a new friend, Doug Roby, who's the owner of an auto racing team called DDR Motorsports. And it was through this conversation that Doug realized that he's not an auto racing team that's trying to sell sponsorship. He's really a marketing organization that happens to race. And so he is going to become a platform that can help deliver his sponsors' messages to his fans, their customers. That's an important part of the sponsorship process, that you are the method of delivery of your sponsor's message. The third thing to keep in mind is one of my favorites. I call it the superpower of image transfer. Now, image transfer works like this. You're a property, you're selling sponsorship. If you have a great image among your audience, among your fans, among your members, then your sponsor will also enjoy that great image with your audience by virtue of the sponsorship. Now, this has great practical application when you're having a conversation with a prospective sponsor, because one of the benefits they might overlook is that merely by being in a sponsorship relationship with you, they will improve their image among your audience, something that no other form of marketing can do. Now, you are now trying to define your audience, and it's important that you speak confidently to that. So defining your audience, determining who your fans are, is the process of proving that your fans are the sponsor's current or future customers. So this part of the sponsorship sales conversation is you're demonstrating to the sponsor that they can find their customers among the people that are your audience. Now, depending on who you are, if you're an association, your audience, your fans are called members. If you're a nonprofit, your fans are probably called donors. Audience is the technical word that we use in sponsorship speak. But if you're an event, you could call your audience attendees, people who attend your event. Really, it's any stakeholder that you speak to, but you have to be able to describe them in two ways. First, you have to describe their demographics. Now, demographics are basically aspects of the audience that doesn't change, like their age, their gender, their race, their place of residence, how much household income they have. You also want to describe your fans in terms of their psychographics. So, psychographics are things like the values they have, the hobbies that they engage in, the things that they believe in. So, demographics and psychographics create an entire picture to give the sponsor a sense of whether or not their customers can be found in your audience. Now, this is not a check the box data exercise. I see a lot of sponsorship marketing presentations that merely throw data on paper. You have to tell a story. You have to tell a story that a sponsor could expect that your audience would include, for example, young millennial females just starting a family, baby boomers who are just entering retirement. All these things really give the sponsor a sense of whether or not that they will be able to solve their problem because their customers are part of your audience. Now, you have something to offer in a sponsorship. And often I see people just put things on paper. Now, these things are called assets or benefits, but I often see offerings that people are throwing the kitchen sink and offering those to sponsorship in exchange for a fee. But really, what you want to think about is what do you have that helps the sponsor tell its story? It may be signage at an event. It may be the ability to display their products at an event. It could be your social media posts or your website link, or even their inclusion in your email blasts. Whatever it is, it has to demonstrate the ability to speak to fans, but also your willingness to promote the sponsors. So it's essentially the offer, the things you offer, facilitates the ability for the sponsor to speak to your audience. The most frequent question I get from sponsorship sellers is, what is this thing worth? What price should I ask? Because the fear is if you ask too much, you're going to turn off prospective sponsors. If you ask too little, you're really underselling what you have to offer. So pricing is a question that I get frequently. But a lot of times I also get a question about pricing in terms of what the sponsorship seller needs. They need sponsorship to fund their operation. They need sponsorship to pay for the costs of putting on an event. And that part of the conversation with a sponsor is irrelevant, because pricing in terms of the conversation with the sponsor is what is the value to the sponsor, not what you'll do with the money or what you need the sponsorship rights fee for. It's all about value, not costs. Now, there are 4 ways to get to the right answer for sponsorship price, and I'll briefly describe them. So total asset cost is when you take the list that we talked about in this slide, things like video board signage. What is the total cost to you of creating that video board signage? It might be $1,000 to create the board, $100 to erect the board, $100 to design the board, and $100 of administrative costs. So you have $1,300 of cost in that. Add up the cost for all of that and multiply it. The rule of thumb is by 2 or 3. So in this case, you would multiply the sum of all those total assets by 2 or 3 to come to a price that you would ask for that sponsorship. The second and most difficult way to assess a price is adding the tangible value of your sponsorship with the intangible value. Now, the tangible value, again, going back to this example, if someone had to buy the video board signage off the street, like, for example, what is the rack rate of that signage? That would be the tangible value of that element of your sponsorship offer. Then the intangible value is what is the value of being associated with you? Because part of what sponsorship is there's value in the partnership. That is, because your brand has value, especially to your audience, it's valuable to the sponsor to be able to say, I'm an official sponsor of such and such nonprofit or such and such event. And then the next but easiest way to price sponsorship is called comparable pricing, or comps. And really what that is you go out and you determine what your competitors are charging for similar sponsorship. If there's a market for sponsorship among your competitors or among events or properties that are similar to yours in other markets, then the pricing that they offer is establishing a comparable pricing or market price for your sponsorship. The rule of thumb is to not price your sponsorship lower than that. Finally, there's a theory called comparable cost. So if a sponsor uses your sponsorship to enhance their brand, to create more awareness, and they didn't use your sponsorship, but say they use something like an advertising campaign, if it cost them $100,000 to have an advertising campaign to achieve a similar result as your sponsorship, then your price should be $100,000. Now, when we come to the part about telling your story, let's keep in mind that not only as marketers, but as humans, stories are the most powerful element of the human experience. Think about how you use stories to connect with your family and your friends. You're going to use stories in the exact same way to connect with sponsors. Now, there are two really important ways to tell your story, and one is to make yourself unique. What is different about you? What is great about you? What is something about you that no one else can offer? Now, that's really difficult. If you're an athlete selling athlete endorsement, which is the form of personal sponsorship, say you play in the NFL, there's 1,600 NFL players. So how are you unique among that group? If you're a nonprofit, there are 1.8 million nonprofits in the US alone. What makes your nonprofit unique? Then think about what makes you a great ambassador to your fans. Do they love you? Do they do what you say? How do they feel about your brand? Be able to convey that through story so that the sponsor knows that if they create a relationship with you, they can enjoy that same relationship with your audience because you're perceived to be a great ambassador among your audience. Finally, that sponsorship presentation, the deck as we call it, should tell that story. That is not just some marketing exercise, but anything that you show to a prospective sponsor should be embedded with the story that makes you unique, that makes you a great ambassador, that demonstrates to the sponsor that you're a great value. Now, people also ask frequently, where do I find sponsors? And this is part of the prospecting process. And I like to view it as a treasure hunt. It is your attempt to find that treasure map, to go hunting for that sponsorship, but do it enthusiastically, make it fun. But really what you're looking for is not landmarks on a map. You're looking for signs of marketing pain that your prospective sponsors have in their business that you believe that you can solve with your sponsorship. Now, the process is a little bit different depending on the type of sponsor or prospective sponsor you're talking about. So there are things called endemic sponsors. Now, endemic sponsors are those companies that have similar interests to your market or industry. So, for example, if you're an auto racing team, endemic sponsors in auto racing would be companies that sell motor oil or tires or engines or things that are products for automobiles. I was on the board of a nonprofit called Outrun the Sun, which is a skin cancer awareness and prevention nonprofit. So, endemic sponsors for that nonprofit would be pharmaceutical companies that produce sunscreen, or dermatology practices that help identify and treat skin cancer. The other type of sponsor is called non-endemic sponsors. This is every other potential sponsor that shares an audience with you, whose customers are in your audience. Now, 4 signs of marketing pain you can look for with non-endemic sponsors. Look for companies that are new to a particular market, especially a market you're really strong. Companies that are new to a market are looking to create brand awareness about their company. Look for sponsors that are launching new products or services. One of the hardest things that sponsors can do is launch new products. It's very expensive, it's very time intensive, it's very risky. But if you could, through your sponsorship, can help bring awareness or even help sell the new product or service, that's a sign of marketing pain that you could address with a sponsorship with you. I always like to look for challenger brands. Now, challenger brands are the number 2 or number 3 or number 4 brands in a particular market. So some of you might remember the famous advertising campaign that the rental car company Avis had. Avis used to boast that we're number 2, but we try harder. Now, they were clearly taking a jab at the number 1 competitor in their market, Hertz. And so if you look at Avis or National or any other brand that's looking to make inroads on the number 1 brand in a market, especially if that brand is in a similar type of property as yours, then the challenger brands would want to be there to go head to head in marketing against their competitor. Finally, if you have an audience that sponsors have a hard time connecting with, then you can boast to a prospective sponsor that a sponsorship with you would give them access to this hard to reach audience. Now, most of the sports industry is based on that, for example, because the sports industry looks to target Gen Z males, 18 to 24, because this is a market that is very, very, very hard to reach with traditional advertising. So live sports is viewed as an opportunity to reach this demographic because you have their attention captive in a sporting event. So what's the hard to reach fan in your property, in your market? So our sponsorship success method teaches the sponsor treasure hunt to use these and other methods to find the signs of marketing pain so you can identify the great sponsors to go after. Now, the sponsorship sales process is very similar to the traditional sales process. If any of you in this audience have had sales training, you'll recognize this process because it's used in the sales profession worldwide. It's prospecting and preparing to sell. It's doing your research about companies that align with your sponsorship. It's making contact either through a deal opening email, through a LinkedIn message, through a phone call, and providing your marketing deck. It's doing your needs assessment conversation and qualifying the prospective sponsor. It's asking about their marketing pain, asking what they need, asking them those questions to demonstrate that you have an ability to address that element of their pain. It's presenting your proposal, and it's overcoming objections that you might receive to that proposal. For example, the common objections that people get are, how do you set your price? I don't see why it's worth $100,000 as a rights fee for this sponsorship. Or, we don't have any budget for this, which is a false objection because often they do have budget for things they want to do, but either this is a brush off or They're just too polite to say no. There's a response for this for you to determine if this is a dead end or if there's still an opportunity for you to have a conversation in the future. And then there's the I don't see how this sponsorship can help me objection, which through your preparation ahead of time, you'll be able to overcome by demonstrating through your elevator speech the 2 or 3 elements of things that can absolutely help them uh, address their marketing pain. When you do this, you'll close the sponsor, you'll have a sponsorship relationship, which you'll then fulfill the promise through fulfillment, and you'll renew that sponsor going forward. Now, speaking of the fulfillment process, this is the process of keeping your sponsors and finding more. So, fulfilling your sponsorship promise, all those things that you promised to do when you had your sponsorship sales conversation, is called fulfillment in sponsorship speak. Now, you will deliver a fulfillment report to a sponsor which has the results of your sponsorship. Remember that at your sponsor, there is a person who has a boss, and he or she will need to justify why having a sponsorship with you was a good investment. You need to provide that person within your sponsor's organization with the data to justify the investment to his or her boss. And then every sponsorship is a long-term relationship. And in long-term relationships, there are always opportunities for improvement and to strengthen the relationship. Your fulfillment report should have all those opportunities for improvement. Then remember, you're nurturing relationships, and we often say associates become titles. Now, what this means is the top tier of a sponsorship is often called the title sponsorship. It's a major sponsorship. It could be the name of your event. It could be the number one sponsor among all your sponsors. And associate sponsors are the number 2 or number 3 or number 4 sponsors who pay less, they receive less benefits, but they're all sponsors to you. Nurturing the relationship is building trust, building a track record of success with your sponsorship. So eventually title sponsors leave, but your associate sponsors who you've already sold can move up and take the place of a title sponsor, so you don't need to start the sales process all over again and find new sponsors. Now, finally, something that can help you find more sponsors by having sponsors is using testimonials and social proof. It's quotes and case studies and all those things from existing sponsors that you can demonstrate to people you're having conversations with that, look, here's the proof that I'm a good value as a sponsorship property. Look at what our other sponsorships say about working with us. Now, there's a lot there into step 1, but if you mastered all the things that we talked about, you'll speak to your program more confidently. But now in step 2, you're building your program, you're researching, prospecting, creating that package. What benefits do you offer? And determining the right price. It's pulling together your sales tools, the email openers, the process that you use on LinkedIn to connect with potential sponsors, and the all-important deck, the marketing presentation you use as a door opener. Now, I've included the QR code for our free sponsorship deck template. This is a template that's been taken by over 4,000 people to start the process of creating their own unique deck. Feel free to download it and use it to start your deck. But there's also the sponsorship proposal, and the difference between a sponsorship proposal and a deck is your sponsorship deck talks about your value proposition, but does not include the price of the sponsorship. You're waiting to offer that later in the process when you have an actual conversation with the sponsor, determine what they need, determine what pain they have, and then create a custom program, which you'll then price in the proposal. And finally, you'll need to determine upfront how you're going to organize your process. Some use an Excel spreadsheet very successfully or Google Sheets. Some use a more complicated sales customer relationship management tool like Salesforce or HubSpot or ActiveCampaign. Whatever you use, you need to determine upfront what that'll be. because the sponsorship process can be complicated once you send a number of outbound inquiries whether people are interested in sponsoring you. Finally, that third step in the sponsorship success method is leveraging that knowledge to sell. It's hitting the bricks. It's keeping notes about outcomes that you've had, good or bad, about the mistakes that you've made, like I did years ago, the objections that you get, and what's the best way to respond to those objections as you get them. To find your way to a community of sellers. Now, we have a community of sellers as part of the sponsorship success method, but find any community of sellers where you can find like-minded people who have the same challenges as you, who can support each other as you go through the sponsorship sales journey. And then create access to a coach or expert, because you are always going to hit a roadblock, but having someone who's been there, done that, will really help you along the way to prevent you from just spinning your wheels. So if you want into the sponsorship success method, here's what this is all about. The founding masterclass of the sponsorship success method starts in a few weeks. It starts on April 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. There will be 8 weeks of workshops, one a week. And we include also a special module just geared for nonprofits and the issues that nonprofits face in nonprofit corporate sponsorship. There are only 20 seats available so that we make sure that we have the right service level and we're able to support all the participants in the sponsorship success method. There are 8 weeks of Q&A calls, coaching calls that you'll be able to participate in, ask questions, role play, do all those things to help you build your program while you're learning to speak confidently to it. And then lifetime access to all the materials that we offer, more broader sponsorship templates, our library of email openers, and a Facebook group of people who are like-minded sponsorship sellers who are also clients, so that they can support each other with best practices as they move through the sponsorship journey. Now, the process to get started, let's just have a one-to-one conversation. I want to know if you're a good fit for this program, but I also expect that you want to determine whether you feel comfortable with our team and you feel that this program's a good fit. Use this QR code. It'll take you to our Calendly page so that you can book a call to find out. So the question is, where do you want to be 1 year from now? If you're spinning your wheels now, what will you do differently to attain the outcomes that you deserve, to sell sponsorship, to find partners who will help you grow your brand, grow your organization, create more impact for what you do? We want to help you do that. We know that the sponsorship success method can do that. I do see that we have plenty of time for questions, so I would love to open it up for questions at this point. Please feel free to put the questions in the chat, and I'll answer them as they come in. Are there any questions? Tyler asks, how important is the marketing deck to opening a door or getting that door kicked in? Great question, Tyler. So the marketing deck is your calling card. Typically, the marketing deck is used to describe who you are and what you stand for. It describes your audience, it describes your value proposition, it tells your unique story, it describes the demographics and psychographics of your fans. It gives a thumbnail sketch of the offering that you have, the benefits that you have available. But really, what its purpose is, it's trying to create that conversation. It isn't the entire conversation. With an email let's just take an example. With an email introduction and the sponsorship, the marketing deck, You want to entice a sponsor to have them see that you're the solution to their pain, that they want to have a Zoom call or a telephone conversation. They want to engage you in a broader discussion to find out who you are and what you stand for. So that marketing deck's got to do a lot of work. It has got to entice them. As an email alone, all of us know, I probably get 50 to 100 emails a day. Um, if something doesn't stand out, I'm off to the next email. So it's got to do a lot of heavy lifting to get you to the next phase, which is to a conversation. Let's see. Emily asks, can we show the deck template QR code? So I'm going to move back to that page. So Emily, if you use that QR code, you could go to directly to the page to get the deck template.